So it's been years since the last big financial crisis, but there's this one question that just won't go away. Is the system really any safer? I mean, we all saw new laws get passed, promising to stop another meltdown from ever happening again. But has anything actually changed? Let's get into this, because the real fight isn't what you see on the news anymore. It's hidden in the fine print.
In this quote right here from former Senator Ted Kaufman, it really nails the problem. See, after the big laws were signed, the job got handed over to regulatory agencies. Their task? To write the actual rules, the nitty-gritty details of how this new system would really work. And according to Kaufman and a lot of other people, that's exactly where everything's gotten stuck.
Because, passing a law is one thing, but making it happen? That's a whole different ballgame. The real battle is in the rulemaking, where all that vague language from Congress has to be turned into specific, concrete instructions for the banks. And this whole process is just turned into a massive battlefield. The result? Gridlock.
And the scale of this delay is, well, it's pretty wild. Get this, according to one law firm that tracks this stuff, regulators have already blown past 28 separate deadlines for getting these new rules finished. Congress wanted to move fast, but the agencies writing the rules just can't keep up.
And this slide right here shows you exactly why. The poor regulators are caught in a political vice. From one side, you've got Democrats pushing them, saying, hey, stick to the deadlines in the law. And from the other side, you've got Republicans saying, whoa, slow down, you're moving way too fast. So what happens? Nothing. Paralysis.
So when you hear people talk about these hard decisions, it's easy to picture these big philosophical arguments. But the truth is, it's a lot more technical than that. The real fights aren't just about words on a page. They're about math.
All right, we're going to go deep now, right into the formulas that banks use to figure out how much risk they're taking on. This is where the real war over financial safety is being fought, not in public debates, but inside a spreadsheet.
And at the heart of it all is this one idea, credit risk. I mean, this is banking 101, right? When a bank loans out money, there's always a chance, always, that they won't get it back. That potential for loss, that's credit risk, and learning how to manage it is everything.
So, to get a handle on that risk, banks break it down into three key parts. First, you've got the probability of default, or PD. That's just a fancy way of asking, what are the odds this person won't pay us back? Then, there's the exposure at default, or EAD. That's, okay, if they do default, how much money are we actually out? And finally, and this is the one that really matters, loss given default, or LGD. This is the percentage of that money we're probably never, ever going to see again.
And it's this last piece of the puzzle, loss given default, that's become a huge point of contention in financial regulation. It sounds super technical, I know, but the idea behind it is actually pretty straightforward.
LGD is really just trying to answer that one simple question. Okay, think of it this way. Say you lend a friend $100 to buy a new bike. If they can't pay you back, but you can take the bike and sell it for $60, well, your exposure was $100, but your actual loss was only $40. Your loss given default is 40%. That's it. That's the whole concept.
So in the real world, this is how it plays out. Somebody defaults on a loan. The bank then scrambles to recover whatever it can. They sell off collateral, they try to restructure the debt, anything to get some of that money back. The piece they can't get back as a percentage of the total loan, that's your LGD. Seems simple enough when you're looking back at what already happened.
But here's the twist. If you want to prevent a crisis, you can't be looking backward. You have to look forward. And that is exactly where the fight over the math really kicks off. How on earth do you predict a loss before it actually happens? And that's the key. Predicting LGD isn't really a science. It's more of an art. It's an educated guess about the future. And because it's a guess, there is so much room for argument, for different models, for different assumptions. And some of those assumptions might be, let's say, a little more optimistic than others.
So for instance, here are two of the main ways they try to do it. One is called market LGD. This tries to guess the loss based on what a defaulted loan is selling for on the open market. It's fast, sure, but what happens if there's no market for that specific debt? The other way is workout LGD. This is more direct. It just tracks the actual cash that's recovered over time. The problem? That can take years. So neither one is perfect, and they both depend on very different ideas about what the future looks like.
Okay, so why does this ridiculously deep dive into financial math actually matter to any of us? Because the strength of the biggest, most important financial rules we have, it all comes down to how you define these tiny little variables.
And this is the big fear. Critics are worried that if banks can use their own more favorable models to calculate something like LGD,
they can make their books look a whole lot safer than they are. A tiny tweak to a formula can create a loophole big enough to drive a truck through, basically making a major rule completely meaningless.
And that's really the bottom line here. The huge public debates about making Wall Street safer, they're not really about grand principles. They are intense technical slugfests over the tiny definitions and formulas buried deep inside thousands of pages of regulations.
Which brings us all the way back to where we started. Do all these rules and the endless fights over how to write them, do they actually solve the too-big-to-fail problem? When you look at the sheer size of these global banks today, that question becomes incredibly hard to answer.
I mean, just take a look at one bank like Citigroup. We're talking about 200 million clients, operating in 160 different countries, with over 170 separate subsidiaries. The complexity is just staggering. And every single one of those moving parts involves calculating risk, and every single one of those calculations is up for the kind of debate we just talked about.
And that leaves us with this final, kind of haunting question from former Senator Kaufman. How in the world do you safely take apart a company of that size with that kind of complexity, especially when it's spread all over the globe? The honest answer is, nobody's really sure. And as long as this fight over the rules and the math hidden inside them keeps going, that question is still dangerously unanswered.